Professor Anita McBride. She is the executive in residence at American University. Good morning, Professor. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
You and I were just talking during the commercial break. This is a historical day. Let's talk about the significance.
Sure. Of course. I mean, every inauguration is a new chapter in the nation's history. But this particular time, we have just come off a period of great national divide and great trauma. The pandemic, of course, is at the root of that, but also there has been so much division in the country. We saw it displayed at the Capitol 2 weeks ago, which I think rocked America to its core. No living American has seen what we saw 2 weeks ago happen at our nation's Capitol. So I think that the significance of an inauguration today, a bit of a turning of the page for the nation, and a real opportunity for the president, the new president, to set a tone and a course for the next 4 years.
Before we took that commercial break, we did talk about the president-elect today going to be President Joe Biden's diverse cabinet picks. Yes. Can you break down some of those picks?
Sure. No, it is. I think there are a couple of notable things about the picks that Joe Biden had. One, the speed with which he did them. Clearly, this is a man, you've seen it displayed in these cabinet selections, who has a wide breadth of relationships with many people throughout our country who have been in public service, and people that he trusts, people he has worked with, people that he knows can do the job. So I think he surprised some people with some of the picks. There clearly were pressures on him to make sure certain people from certain backgrounds were included. And I think by and large, of course, he did that. I think the one notable exclusion from the diversity of this cabinet is the fact that there is no one from the other side. There's no Republican that has been nominated to be in any one of these positions, which we had seen a trend with that before Donald Trump, of course. But I think that, really, again, the speed, the diversity, and the fact that, this is a person who wants to hit the ground running day one and already has had a number of his nominees go through hearings.
Professor McBride, I'm going to keep your audio up, but I do want to show our viewers we have a live vantage point now of Air Force One for the first time this morning. Okay. The sun is rising there at Joint Base Andrews, so we're all about live here. So I'm taking everybody out to the Air Force One shot while we keep talking. But the confirmation hearings that started yesterday, how do you think they went? There was 3 of them, and I think everybody was most interested in the Treasury Secretary due to the state of the economy and the pandemic.
Well, sure. Of course, that's an important nomination. The first woman to be our Treasury Secretary. I mean, honestly, I can't believe that, but that's an important step, a person of experience, a person with a solid hand. And I think both sides of the aisle know that. I think the other notable hearing that happened yesterday is Lloyd Austin, because this is now the second time that we are going to ask the Congress to waive the restriction on a former active duty military to be able to hold a civilian position at the Defense Department, the Secretary of Defense. So that apparently went well. There are some issues and questions, of course, about that were anticipated that Elizabeth Warren would ask about his ties to corporate America and the defense industry in particular. But it does appear that will go through. He has his House hearing Thursday. So that was an important one. The other issue, of course, that came up yesterday was the challenge by Senator Hawley, Josh Hawley of Missouri, to the nominee for Homeland Security, and wanting to know more about how he's going to protect our borders. But again, these are important nominations to be heard first. The National Security Team, this was an important step this week.
All right, Professor, I do want to ask you too, you just talked about how quickly Joe Biden chose his cabinet members. How quickly can we see them get to work?
I think you'll see that this Congress, and certainly now the Senate, is in Democratic hands starting tomorrow. They will convene quickly. Senator Schumer already said that they are getting to work this afternoon. I think you'll see some confirmations of these critical positions, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, rather quickly so that they can't get to work. And the good news, though, is let's remember there are acting professionals in these agencies, to keep things operational until those final Senate confirmations are done and there is a swearing in of new appointees.
I did want to ask you really quickly, what do you think about the president-elect choosing members to be on his team that were former opponents against him when he first announced his candidacy? We've got Pete Buttigieg and even Kamala Harris, who's now going to be his vice president.
Right. Well, that was the first indication right there that in Joe Biden's core, he can reach across divides. He divides within his own party, but also divides on the other side of the aisle. I think what was also notable about him is, and the relationships that he has and is able to keep, is how one of the first calls he got after winning the election was from his former colleague, Senator Susan Collins from Maine, the Republican from Maine, who had a bruising battle to win her reelection. But that was an indication to me, to how the new president will be able to work with members across the aisle. And that is very important. That's part of showing the healing of divisions, and in the same to the selection of Pete Buttigieg and certainly Kamala Harris, who had a notable moment to, really going after Joe Biden's character in the debate.
All right, Professor Anita McBride, executive in residence at American University. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me this morning?
No, I just think I appreciate the opportunity to talk on this historic day. And I think letting the nation now come together. This is an opportunity, a challenge, but an opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on News Now from Fox. We are taking a live look now, everybody, at Air Force One. The events upcoming today. Let's talk about exactly what is going to happen. Marine One arrives at Joint Base Andrew at 8:10 this morning. At 8:15, there's going to be a ceremony. You heard Doug Luzader talk about it. 8:35, President Trump boards Air Force One, and at 8:55,